super fascinating and important, partially enraging revelation coming out of Arizona. Mark Brnovich, who is the former attorney general, it's being revealed that after the 2020 election, his Justice Department investigated the 2020 election and the claims that Trump was making, the dishonest and incorrect claims that Trump was making, and they found out that all of these things Trump was saying were not true, and they kept it a secret. They kept the fact that they did that investigation a secret because Mark Brnovich, he doesn't fall into hardcore election denier, but instead I think there's some questions, but I'm not saying the election was stolen and Biden did win the state, but there's some questions. He's that category. And so to keep up his ability, keep up the facade of someone the MAGA base could still support, he kept this a secret and muddied the waters. And it is really wild to see. And Trump, I might remind you, also after the 2020 election, got researchers to look into the states we recently learned. They found out also his claims were lies, and he kept telling them, and he kept that a secret. But here about Mark Brnovich from the Washington Post, now he's no longer the Attorney General, and the current Attorney General is the one who made this public. Nearly a year after the 2020 election, Arizona's then Attorney General Mark Brnovich launched an investigation into voting in the state's largest county that quickly consumed more than 10,000 hours of his staff's time. Trump is constantly saying, why won't people just look into the claims of election fraud? 10,000 hours just in the state of Arizona. And let's talk about what they found. Investigators prepared a report in March 2022 stating that virtually all claims of error and malfeasance were unfounded. According to internal documents reviewed by the Washington Post, Brnovich, a Republican, kept it private. In April, the Attorney General, who was running in the GOP primary, that's why he was doing this, for a U.S. Senate seat, released an interim report claiming that his office had discovered serious vulnerabilities. He left out edits from his own investigators refuting his assertions. So I think for the purposes of getting in the good graces of the GOP base, was essentially lying, saying it's not a lie. Of course, there's vulnerabilities in our election system, but by lying by omission, we'll say, leaving things out purposefully that disprove Trump's claims and not speaking out against those claims for the purposes of his own election prospects. His office then compiled an election review summary in September that systematically refuted accusations of widespread fraud and made clear that none of the complaining parties, from state lawmakers to self-styled election integrity groups, have presented any evidence to support their claims. Brnovich left office last month without releasing the summary. And then it continues. But 10,000 hours of his staff's time extensively looking into all these claims.
Found no
and
evidence.
It found, and the next clip I'm going to play is playing, apologies, it found that the claims that Trump was making, the claims that Sidney Powell, the release the Kraken person, that Rudy Giuliani with a melting face, all these people, those claims were not true. You and I knew that. A lot of Republicans, over 50%, I think it's 60%, believe the election is stolen. And at that time, I think it was even more, right after the election. And Mark Brnovich did not do his, in my mind, to use a word that they are very fond of, did not do his patriotic duty to make clear this is not accurate. And some things, you choose not to talk about it for a political reason. You should have. It's not going to be the biggest stain on your political record. This is everything. What is being a politician in our political process? What is being a representative or being in one of these positions of power? It is a position within our democratic process, and thus protecting that democratic process, advocating on behalf of the truth about that democratic process is your number one priority. And he didn't do it here, which disgusts me. Here is an interview John Oliver did with Mark Brnovich that kind of gives you a sense, just a little bit of a moment here, I'll show, of the line that Brnovich was going with. It wasn't, let me make clear, I looked into, and my team looked into extensively these claims, and they're false. The election was not stolen. He played coy with it. Take a look.
That the election in Arizona,
this was before all of the reporting we just looked at came out,
was fraudulent or stolen from Donald Trump.
Donald Trump lost Arizona, period. I've said that from the very beginning.
There have been
isolated incidences thus far that we've identified,
yes,
and we are prosecuting.
Yes.
We still have some active investigations going on, but people can draw their own conclusions.
There is no, people cannot draw their own conclusions. That's the point of the law.
Yeah, it is.
The law is that you have facts and you have fiction.
Right.
The fact is the election in Arizona was well run, not fraudulent, and not stolen from Donald Trump, according to even your investigation.
I have never said.
Why is it so hard to just say yes to that?
Okay, so you get the point. He'll go, I said Biden won the state of Arizona. It's the same game they play when hosts or interviewers will ask election deniers, can you say that Biden rightfully won and legitimately won the 2020 election? And individuals who deny elections will go, Biden is the president. That's not the question. Did he legitimately, which he did, win the election? Is he rightfully the president? Biden's the president. And they'll do that on loop. Similar thing here. Biden won Arizona, and there have been isolated instances of voter fraud. Yeah, you mean like every election ever since the beginning of our democratic process. There's always isolated incidences of fraud. When millions of people vote, you're going to have some instances of fraud. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about widespread voter fraud, a coordinated effort to change the election results. That didn't happen. There was no chance of the isolated instances of someone either accidentally or purposefully as an individual going and voting at two locations or whatever it might be is not at all relevant to this conversation. And you bringing it into this conversation is incredibly, incredibly dishonest. And now we know for sure he was sitting there in the back of his mind knowing that extensively, unequivocally, and undeniably, he had proven that, as John Oliver was saying, the election was not stolen from Donald Trump. And I don't like using provocative terms like this so often, but it matters in this situation to say that he was too much of a coward. That's what it is. He was too much of a coward to stand up, be courageous like other Republicans have been, and be honest, fully, 100%. Not just not be overtly dishonest, not just make sure he doesn't tell a lie on paper, but be fully and completely honest. That's what he didn't do. And it's part of the reason that we are in the place we are now with the threat to our democracy. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are uploaded to YouTube, plus get the full bonus show every single Saturday, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Luke Beasley. That's patreon.com/Luke Beasley. Link in the description.